Auburn Baseball has completed week 2 of 2024. We are here to recap the week that was. We're going to take a look back at the weekend, talk about what we just saw versus Samford, and of course, look ahead to the next weekend series. All that coming up right now. War Eagle Auburn family and War Eagle, a special War Eagle, and hello to our E2C Network family. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching or listening. We appreciate you being here and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. We encourage you to subscribe and follow and like and share this content on whatever platform you're getting this on, especially if you love you some Auburn baseball content. As is the case, last week we gave this the first go around in week 1 for Auburn baseball. We're doing things a little bit different this year, at least during the regular season for Auburn baseball. We're going to be doing a post-game reaction show in 2 parts, mainly part 1 being a podcast format where we give you the need-to-know information about week 2 and everything that we just saw within that. And then we'll take some Q&As if there's any on our live stream, a reaction style show that y'all are normally used to from our live viewers here on Tuesday evenings after the current baseball game, the one tonight being Samford. If you're listening on the audio format, we appreciate you doing that later on in the week. If you guys continue to like this, we'll continue to do it this way. So here we are, week 2, roundup for Auburn Baseball 2024. And we're looking back at the series for the Jax Baseball Classic, which was the first one ever that Auburn got to be a part of. And some big names were there with some big opportunities for Auburn to make a statement for where they line up and all those different things. We're going to be talking about what we just saw. Auburn beating Samford at home to go 7-1 on the year currently, completing their week 2 process. And of course, we want to look ahead to what's going to happen maybe with UConn coming to town, take on the Auburn Tigers. I'm sure they're going to appreciate at least what will be warmer weather than what they're used to up there in UConn. So as we do this, as you're watching live, you can obviously make sure you smash the like button and post your comments and questions that you might have that we'll take in the second part of our show. Let's take a look back first at the Jax. It's a long name, the Jax College Baseball Classic. Game 1, Auburn took on number 18 Iowa and won 17-5. Game 2, Wichita State. Auburn also won that one and run ruled that in 7 innings, 19-8. In Game 3, Auburn took on number 10, probably the biggest game for Auburn in the College Baseball Classic in Jacksonville, the Virginia number 10 team, but took a loss in a back-and-forth affair, 4-6. When I always give you your I think what the people at Auburn and everybody else would probably think are the best players for each weekend series. We'll give you a batter. We'll give you a pitcher. Bobby Pierce had quite a game for himself, quite a week as well. He ended up being the tournament MVP, even though he was not part of the team that went undefeated in this series, that being Virginia. During that time, he played in all 3 games, batted for .308, slugged for .400. I believe I actually have that a little backwards there. Slugged for .769, and then was on base .400. He was 4 for 13 on the weekend, 4 runs, 2 home runs, and 6 RBIs, 1 walk, and 1 for 1 on stolen bases. But it wasn't even just his bat that got him into the tournament MVP. It was his glove as well. He threw somebody out at home. He robbed a home run out of right field that even confused the announcers and the broadcasters at that time, whether he caught it or not, but he did. So it's not just, as some people like to call him, Big Bat Bobby or Bobby Barrels, Big Glove Bobby. I don't know if that works, but offensively, defensively, great performance for Bobby Pierce. Pitching-wise, your pitcher of the weekend, John Armstrong, a relief pitcher, had a 0 ERA in 2 appearances, 3.1 innings, only allowed 1 hit, and had 3 strikeouts. He was instrumental in a comeback win that first game in the Jax College Baseball Classic versus Iowa. So that was also a great way to get started off by having him kind of lock it down for us to have that comeback win secured, but also was instrumental in the Virginia game, keeping Auburn in that affair, which was back and forth at times. A couple of storylines from the Jax College Baseball Classic that I think you should be aware of. The starting rotation for pitchers stayed the same between Alsop, Gonzalez, and Carson Myers in that order for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Your all-tournament team, we already mentioned one of them, That was Bobby Barrels. I'm going to call him Bobby Barrels for those. There's a constant debate going on with what his nickname actually is. But the rest of your all-tournament team was Derek Fabian, Irish, and Cooper McMurray, some names that you're very, very familiar with. I did note that Coach said after the last game in the Jax College Baseball Classic that he felt like the team tailed off a little bit pitching-wise from the middle portion of the second game onward. And maybe you saw that a little bit was a few more runs given up than maybe they should have at times. I do think that the Virginia game was a very good barometer test for where Auburn falls currently in the season. If you remember, Virginia was a College World Series team, and they were a team that Auburn will likely have an opportunity if they make it to the postseason and make it far, and Virginia does as well. So to see a team that was there last year and have a back and forth affair, this wasn't a situation where Auburn had to kind of fight back into it. They were in the lead in this game, probably the most important game of this Jax College Baseball Classic. So that was a good showing right there. Up until that point, it was a 6-game winning streak, which was the longest for Auburn since 2001, I believe. So a cool note there. Season high of 19 runs in that Wichita State game. Cooper McMurray had some good games as a result of that, a grand slam. Derek Fabian led the team in batting average all week. Those are some other batters of note from that weekend. And Joseph Gonzalez, what I've noticed in his first 2 starts, if I'm remembering his first one correctly, he's given up some runs early, but he settled down, ended up getting the win. He's the only starting pitcher from the weekend that had the win attached to him, so that's good there. If you've looked at the rankings, they're all starting to come out now, so it gets a little bit confusing on which one to follow and which one to. So they put out a new graphic this week if you're interested in knowing where Auburn falls and which particular ranking. There are a ton out there. So that is the look back at the Jax College Baseball Classic. Let's talk about what we just saw. Samford, the Samford game, a very familiar foe that we often see in midweek games. Auburn wins 12-3 in a game that you would hope and expect them to be able to win. Tonight, taking care of business, starting out in midweek games, 2-0. I want to give hats off to Connor McBride. This is his second start as the midweek pitcher and got off to, I think, between the two, a pretty decent showing that he may be ready. And this is early. We're in week 2 and game 2 of the midweek games, that he may be ready to lock down this position for himself as the midweek starter. Now, look, coach is going to probably want to throw some other guys in starting situations at certain points to see how they do in the midweek games. But I really like what I'm seeing. And I think it was, I'm trying to remember which announcer, I don't know who to attribute to, talked about it tonight on the radio, that he may have played himself into some more weekend playing time as well, the way he's pitching currently right now. Griffin Graves came in and relieved Connor McBride. And I want to just point out, a lot of people get really excited about young talent. And boy, did you get excited about Griffin Graves in his first outing last week. This weekend, he gets touched up a little bit and kind of shows you a back and forth. Still young, but you've seen the talent early. Just give him a little bit of time to get used. Bobby Pierce, again, continues tonight. Had a triple. Is one of the better batters overall tonight. I think he went 2 for 4 when I last looked at it. And, of course, Cooper McMurray again hits a home run tonight. I will note that this isn't the only time that we're going to see Samford. So if you like seeing Samford, I know Austin, my co-host of the Auburn Experience podcast, likes to talk about his connection with that team in the past. So we will see them again, the last midweek game of the season. So look forward to having them back at Auburn, it looks like. Usually it's a home and away situation, even for some of the smaller Alabama teams. But this time they're coming back for a second round at the end of the season. First round very much goes in Auburn favor, taking care of business. So we have looked back. We have talked about what currently we saw in week 2. Now let's look ahead to another regular weekend series. We just got back from the Jax College Baseball Classic, where we played 3 different teams. We will now move into the regularly scheduled program of a season of 3 games with one particular opponent. That is, if the weather cooperates. Softball is already having a time trying to get some of their games in. I would imagine it's going to get tricky for Auburn as well. having some of that same storm systems that are rolling through this next week, maybe wreaking havoc on the weekend. We will see if that happens, though. Regardless, I already said the joke at the beginning of the show. UConn has got to feel a lot better coming to Auburn with slightly warmer temperatures. And I say slightly, it's still going to be cool, but definitely better than it is up there at UConn. In fact, if you look at UConn's schedule, they go a lot of places early on because it's too cold to play up there. So their home fans don't even get to see them for quite some time. Coming to Auburn, obviously a Big East opponent. And this is interesting in their schedule because they have not even played midweek games because it's too cold up there to play some of the regional teams like a lot of us will down here in the South. So they've only played weekend series. They did just play in a weekend, not series, but a tournament of sorts, kind of like we did, Indiana State, and fell 1-2. Now, and that was in their third game. Why am I bringing that up? Most of you are like, why would you bring up a loss? Well, if you remember last year, Indiana State was one of those teams that not only made it to the College World Series tournament, but hosted a regional and was one of those smaller teams that really shocked a lot of people, the Sycamores. And so I think kind of like we were talking about with Virginia, that's a team that you kind of look at as a barometer test to see where you stand. Losing 1-2 on a weekend situation where you probably have some of your best players out there is maybe a good sign to take UConn seriously, even though they don't have the best record right now. From what I can see in the season thus far, it looks like the best chance for UConn is to keep the score low. If they can do that, problem is they're playing in Auburn. And of course, Auburn teams in general just play really well at home, especially at Plainsman Park. And offensively seems to be a strength for us this year. So I don't know that it's going to go well for the UConn Huskies. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will be the games. Looking back at their last series for informational purposes, they're coming off a weekend series with Cal, where they lost all 3 games. But they really weren't routes or anything like that. The worst game was the first one where they lost 4-8, but then they lost 12-15 and 4-5 in the final game in that series. So not a great start for UConn. They're having to play on the road a lot now coming to Auburn. You got to think that that's going to bode well for Auburn's favor, the way that the rotation seems to be going right now, the way the offense seems to be going. So I look to have favorable results to talk about with y'all next week when we get back here. So that is your look back at the Jax College Baseball Classic, the current analysis of Samford, and of course, the Auburn baseball series coming up with UConn. We now want to move into our second part of our stream tonight, where we actually do a normal reaction stream and would like to talk to some of you this evening. I see some of our my friends that I know over here early to mess with me, so thanks. Now that I'm actually looking in, lots of fine folks. Paul, Tyler, Rhodes, Angela, thank y'all so much for tuning in. What's on y'all's mind? What questions do you have? If you have none, we can wrap the show here and give you your time back tonight. But if there's any thoughts that you have about the Jax College Baseball Classic, what you just saw, I will say one thing that I have noted. Boy, it's been a struggle. Not for very many batters, to be honest with you, but Javon Hernandez, our second baseman, has had quite the struggle getting going in the very early batting option. He started off at the top of the lineup, has moved down, and it hasn't got much better. He did finally get something on his average, but it's still not that great. So that's another little extra thing to maybe pay attention to see if he finally gets going. It'll be nice because if everybody else stays super hot offensively and he's added to the mix, even if he has to stay lower in the lineup, that'll be a good sign for the offense. I'm really liking our pitching staff right now. I know Coach talked about, if you listen to some of his in-game press conferences and commentary, that maybe there was a little bit to be desired on the back end of that series in Jacksonville. But I really like the way the guys started off, starting pitchers, also Gonzalez and then Carson Myers. They looked pretty locked in through 2 weekend series. And then some of our guys that are having some really good outings, and maybe some hit or miss at times. We've seen Zach Crotchfeld, we've seen John Armstrong, who we talked about, Herbert Holtz. Some had some better weekends than others, but I really like the way that is looking right now. And it seems like in the past, Auburn's had one year where pitching was better, one year where hitting was better, but it maybe seems like they're both kind of even killed right now, or even that's not keeled. I should pronounce that a little bit more fluidly. Keeled right now. So I like so far with what we're seeing. Yes, having played a somewhat easy series against Eastern Kentucky, what you should win your midweek games against local-ish teams, and then now going to take on more challenging opponents such as Virginia, such as Iowa, and how we responded in some situations where you could have gotten behind or given up in a back and forth situation and really competed in a strong fashion. So, frankly, I think it's been a great start to the baseball season thus far. But if you guys have any other thoughts, of course, let us know. All right, I'm going to give you guys what to expect next here at E2C Network. Again, if you have any other questions, thoughts, or topics about the baseball team, you need to drop them in fast before we get out of here. But what's coming up next? Tomorrow night, you do not want to miss this, folks. We have a humongous basketball game versus Tennessee. Post-game stream right after that, probably going to be around the 9 o'clock time, between 9:15. It goes long, closer to 9:30. But we're going to have some fun talking about that, whether we win or lose, because that's a big-time matchup. Saturday, if you like post-game streams, we got another one for you, right? The first one for March. Mississippi State at home. We'll need to get that win to continue to secure our place in postseason SEC tournament situations and beyond. Sunday evening, the Auburn Experience, episode 68. I know we said we were going to do 68 last week. Ended up being a Q&A show because Austin was out sick. He will be back as far as we know. So episode 68 will be there for you all. And of course, we'll be back here next week for another post-game audio recording for baseball content, but also to take some of your comments and questions that you may or may not have about the baseball team and how they're currently performing. And I know we're kind of in a point right now where there's not a lot of exciting things outside of what we just saw down in Jacksonville. But as we get closer and closer to SEC play, things are going to get a lot more heated, a lot more exciting, a lot more frantic as you try to compete in the ever challenging SEC. Doesn't matter what the sport you talk about. So with that being said, that'll do it. Your look ahead, your analysis of the current, your look back as well, I should say. And now finally, we took some questions and dropped some more comments about Auburn baseball in week 2. Excited to talk about week 3 with you guys coming up in about a week. Till I talk to you guys again, thank you so much for being here. And of course, War Eagle.